For thousands of years, humanity gazed at the Bible as though it were a mirror reflecting the face of God. Millions of voices whispered the same words: faith, salvation, love. But what if that mirror has long been clouded by the dust of delusion? What if behind its smooth surface lurk other faces, ancient, powerful, alien to us? In the depths of history, the texts that became scripture once sang with many voices. They spoke of numerous beings who walked among humans, leaving their footprints in the sands of time. The word Elohim, today perceived as the name of God, originally meant not one, but many. Multiple minds, multiple forces, multiple agendas. They were not embodiments of mercy. They were players in an ancient game, with humanity as their pawn. Over centuries, those notes were muted. Translations, revisions, deliberate simplifications, all of it turned a complex and layered narrative into a streamlined melody about an all-powerful God. Those in power understood. A single object of worship creates a more obedient populace. Thus was born the illusion that became the bedrock of empires, wars, and cultures. But if you look closer, behind that veil, you can glimpse the outlines of another story. A story of beings who used humans as tools, as raw material for their own designs. A story of interventions, conflicts, and technologies so far beyond human comprehension that they seemed like miracles. This is the beginning of a journey toward awakening. Truth is always dangerous, especially when it shatters the foundations of belief. But can we call it faith if it was built on fear and submission? The question you fear to ask is already whispering in your mind. What if everything you were taught was nothing more than a beautiful curtain drawn over a mechanism of control? Here, in this narrative, we will tear away the veils one by one, reclaiming the right to see the world as it has always been, multidimensional, complex, terrifying, and yet profoundly liberating. In the darkness of ancient scrolls, a quiet fire still burns. It illuminates forgotten words, seared into the parchment of time, words that could shatter our perception of reality if heard in their original form. Among them lies one that became the cornerstone of faith for millions, Elohim. But its true meaning has always lingered in the shadows. In the ancient Hebrew tongue, Elohim resonates as the voice of the many, not a hymn to the one. The word itself, in its purest essence, is plural. It speaks of a gathering of beings, powerful, enigmatic, those who held the authority to shape human destiny and steer the currents of history. Yet, as these texts crossed the borders of civilizations and entered new tongues, their meaning was deliberately crushed and simplified. For translators and rulers alike, it was far more convenient for the people to see one God, absolute, omnipotent, unreachable. Thus, the multitude was transfigured into the singular. The polyphony of voices became the monotonous sound of a sermon on obedience. But if one dares to listen closely to the whisper of the ancients, a dissonance emerges, stories of beings who were neither angels nor demons. They were alive, corporeal, and yet far beyond the grasp of human comprehension. These Elohim walked among nations, intervened in their affairs, directed wars, and erected kingdoms. It was not an act of divine love, but a strategy of control. They did not seek worship, they sought influence. They created systems of power, designed cultures like architects, whose blueprints were known only to themselves. One by one, translators excised these inconvenient details. Greek and Latin revisions smoothed the sharp edges, replacing Elohim with the image of a single God. This was no mistake. It was a deliberate act. For rulers, it was far easier to govern a people believing in a solitary figure than in a multitude of players, each pursuing their own agenda. Yet, in the cracks of old manuscripts, a call to awakening still echoes. The truth whispers, "They were many, and they walked among you." When parchment changes hands, it changes its soul. For every quill that glides across ancient pages leaves not only words but intentions. Thus began the long and intricate story of the Bible, a book that now appears monolithic, yet in its original form was a tangled weave of texts, debates, and revisions. And the first translations from ancient Hebrew into Greek and later into Latin were not mere acts of linguistic transfer. They were acts of transformation. When the Septuagint was born in Alexandria, in the shadow of grand libraries and palaces, the text had already begun to change its face. Greek philosophers and Jewish scholars argued over how to carry words rich in nuance into a language accustomed to clear boundaries. Each choice of word, each simplification, each omission inevitably gave birth to new illusions. But it was with the Latin translations and Jerome's Vulgate that a true era of editing faith began. This text was crafted not only as a spiritual guide, but as a tool for political and cultural unification. It became the foundation of a new doctrine, where a singular God was a convenient figure of authority, and the plural Elohim, a dangerous chaos threatening to unravel the structure of control. Roman emperors and Christian leaders understood. A worldview with too many voices breeds questions, and questions are power's worst enemy. Thus, edits softened, erased, and smoothed over details that might make people think differently. They shaped the texts into mirrors reflecting only submission and fear of a singular power. Yet the ancient whispers did not vanish. Deep within manuscripts, between the lines of familiar verses, the murmurs of many voices can still be heard. It was not one God, but a gathering of mighty beings, debating, erring, making decisions that altered the course of human history. Today, we are told, the Bible is unchanging, perfect, divine in every letter. But how can we call perfect a text that was rewritten, corrected, and molded again and again to suit rulers of different ages? This book did not merely proclaim God, it fortified thrones, justified wars, dictated laws, and dismantled civilizations in the name of a higher plan. The history of its translations is a history of power struggles veiled in words of salvation. And as you hear these words, ask yourself, who held the quill? And why were they so intent on rewriting the truth? Words are keys. But keys to what? To doors of truth, or to locks that hide it from our sight? Among the many names whispered in ancient texts, one shines with particular intensity: Yahweh. For billions it became the embodiment of all that is sacred, the source of love and mercy. But what if behind this name lies a very different story? In the original Hebrew writings, the name Yahweh did not hold the singular and absolute meaning we attribute to it today. To the ancients, it was not the name of a supreme God, but a title, a designation for one of the many powerful beings, the same Elohim who roamed the earth and played their games with nations. This name signified not the creator of all, but power, dominance, and authority. It marked status in a council of entities, each with its own role, its own ambitions. Yet as the Bible passed through centuries in the hands of translators, the meaning of this name shifted. Texts were simplified, revised, and smoothed into a more convenient form. Yahweh became the One. The original complexity of the figure, the layered nature of its identity, was erased. Instead of a chorus of entities engaging with the world, people were presented with a single omnipotent ruler, holding all power and all responsibility. This change was no accident, no misunderstanding. It was a calculated strategy. It is far easier to govern a populace that believes there is but one supreme force to which they must submit unconditionally. A plurality of voices and powers breeds questions, and questions are the enemy of control. Today, when we utter the name Yahweh, we rarely pause to consider its roots. But if we listen closely to the whispers of ancient manuscripts, we may hear a different tale, a tale of conflicts and wars where Yahweh was not a flawless deity, but a participant, one side in a larger struggle. A tale of titles and power, where each Elohim sought to establish influence over humanity and the earth. And if this is true, if Yahweh was merely one figure in a pantheon of mighty beings, then is it not time to admit that even the very image of God was built upon distortions? What if, behind the mask of a merciful creator, lies a far more complex and unsettling reality, a history of domination where humanity was but a pawn in someone else's game? This knowledge will not comfort you. It will not bring you peace, but it will grant you freedom. The freedom to see ancient texts, not through the eyes of a subject, but through the eyes of a seeker of truth. Power always craves obedience, and when it discovers how to fuse fear with faith, it forges the strongest of chains, unseen yet unbreakable. This chain coils around minds, paralyzes hearts, and transforms nations into docile masses. Thus, religion became the greatest instrument of control in human history. When we speak of faith, we like to imagine it as light, a guiding star for the lost. But history reveals another image. It teaches us that light can also be the reflection of a bonfire where rulers warm their hands in the glow of human fear and devotion. Recall the era of Constantine the Great. In the early 4th century, he recognized that the chaos of polytheism no longer held the empire together. People needed a new idea, simple, clear, unifying. Christianity became that idea. Constantine did not merely convert, he shaped the faith. The Bible was edited, councils convened, and hundreds of texts were cast aside as heretical and dangerous. Those that remained were polished to perfection, but a perfection that served not God, but the emperor's throne. From that moment on, church and state merged into a single organism. The new God became a symbol of authority, demanding submission, and the church its voice and whip. People were taught to resist power was to resist God. To doubt became a mortal sin. For centuries, this strategy worked. It was refined like a weapon. In the Middle Ages, the church controlled kings, armies, and nations. The Inquisition burned out any spark of dissent, while the Crusades proved that faith could justify bloodshed and plunder. Each time power trembled, religion steadied it, whispering to the masses, "Humility is a virtue, obedience the path to salvation." But truth always leaves traces, and if you look closely, you can see how the Bible became a sophisticated code of governance. The images of hell and heaven, reward and punishment, love and wrath, all these shaped human thought, teaching people to fear, to love, and to obey at once. Ask yourself, what is the true purpose of a force that demands worship? Why would it crave your devotion? Love does not beg for kneeling, but power always does. Now, standing on the threshold of this knowledge, ask yourself, was faith ever freedom? Or was it a cage built by the hands of those who declared themselves mediators between you and the truth? For centuries, we were told the Elohim were but another name for God, that their deeds were acts of love and their laws expressions of care. But if we brush the dust from ancient scrolls, a different image emerges, harsh, cold, and terrifyingly real. The Elohim were not merciful fathers watching over their children from the heavens. They were curators, manipulators, and controllers whose interest in humanity stemmed not from compassion, but from calculation. Their games were not for the good of mankind, but for their own ambitions. They waged wars, shaped empires, toppled kings, and raised new dynasties as though these were pieces on a colossal chessboard. Every intervention in human affairs was a strategy. Every miracle described in the texts may have been not divine will, but technology beyond the comprehension of ancient peoples. The division of tongues at Babel, the fiery chariots of prophets, the thunder and lightning of Sinai. These were not mere symbols, but traces of forces orchestrating events on Earth with the precision of military campaigns. But why? Why would such powerful beings expend their efforts on humanity? The answer is as simple as it is unsettling. Power. Humans were a resource, a tool, a lever in the struggle for dominance among the Elohim themselves. In the texts, if read without the filters of dogma, one sees the fingerprints of constant interference, wars, decrees, tests. This was not a path to spiritual enlightenment. It was a path of subjugation. And yet, today, when we speak their name, we do so with reverence, as if grateful for the life we were given. But ask yourself, was it truly a gift? If humans were created as a labor force, as pawns in a cosmic game, is that love? Or exploitation, cloaked in the guise of a sacred plan? The Elohim have not left us. Their systems of control continue to operate in our world. Their images are woven into our laws, our cultures, even our patterns of thought. The notions of duty, sin, and fear of a higher power are code written deeper than any genetic sequence. Look to the sky. For millennia, humanity has lifted its eyes to the heavens, seeing in the stars the dwelling place of gods. But what if those gods were not metaphors, not the fruit of human imagination? What if they truly descended from the heavens, not as spirits, but as beings of flesh and technology, far beyond anything ancient humans could comprehend? Across cultures, from Sumer to the Maya, from the tribes of the Amazon to the bustling cities of ancient Egypt, we find the same narrative. Beings descending from the skies in fiery chariots, bringing knowledge, metal, writing, and at times, terror. They are known by many names: Anunnaki, Nephilim, serpent gods. But their signature is the same everywhere: intervention, control, manipulation. And when these legends are linked to biblical texts, the picture becomes clearer. The Elohim may not have been abstract deities, but highly advanced civilizations whose technologies appeared as magic. Their voices from the heavens were radio transmissions. Their fiery chariots were flying craft. Their heavenly wars were displays of power, described by people without the language of science as battles between gods. Consider the Tower of Babel. Officially, it's a story about human pride and divine punishment. But strip away the dogma, and another interpretation emerges: humanity striving to reach the stars, and the Elohim intervening to halt their project. They confused languages, destroyed cooperation, and stopped the construction. Why? Perhaps they feared humanity would gain knowledge that must remain hidden. Seen from this perspective, history takes on a disturbingly coherent shape. The creation of humanity as a species may not have been an act of love, but one of engineering, an experiment in crafting a labor force. Myths of gold mining for the gods, found on Sumerian tablets, suddenly sound different, like chronicles of exploitation. And if the Elohim were the architects of early civilization, they may also have been its jailers. Their influence did not vanish. It is embedded in our institutions, religions, and social structures. They left, but their mechanisms of control remain, sustaining an illusion of freedom that is, in truth, a cage. Ask yourself, if we are the product of someone else's design, are we capable of breaking free? Or is every surge toward freedom just another experiment in the laboratory of ancient astronauts? In the dark halls of ancient temples, beneath layers of dust and oblivion, lie clues, images, carvings, tablets. They depict scenes we are taught to call myths. Humans reaching toward beings in strange suits, fiery machines crossing the skies, symbols resembling complex schematics. But what if these were not fantasies? What if they were memories of encounters with technologies so advanced they appeared as magic? The Tower of Babel stands as a testament to human audacity. The drive to build a path to the heavens may have been more than allegory. It may have been a real attempt to ascend to knowledge approaching that of the Elohim. Their response was swift and decisive. The confusion of tongues, the destruction of unity, the halting of progress. They knew, once humanity gained access to true technologies, control would be lost. Consider the Ark of the Covenant, described in texts as a sacred chest radiating power, lethal to the touch, capable of summoning thunder and lightning. Is this not the description of a device storing immense energy, a weapon, or perhaps a communication station? To the ancients, it could only be called a miracle. The Elohim did not merely rule, they restricted. Their technologies allowed them to manipulate weather, alter crops, provoke droughts or floods, fostering dependency in the nations under their gaze. They shaped not only bodies, but minds. Their images, words, and prohibitions embedded themselves into myths and rituals, lodging deep within the subconscious of generations. Even more unsettling is that these traces have not vanished. We find them in recurring symbols across the globe: the gears and spirals of the Maya, India's flying chariots, Sumerian tablets showing beings operating intricate machinery. These artifacts are silent witnesses to an age when humanity was but a component of a larger experiment. But if Elohim technologies truly shaped civilizations, we must ask, was our progress ever natural? Or was every discovery, every leap forward, carefully permitted, meticulously dosed so we would never surpass our makers? This is not merely a question of the past. If their systems still operate today, perhaps even our current breakthroughs are nothing more than another program in their endless project. Centuries passed, civilizations rose and fell, empires ascended and crumbled, kings came and went. Yet something remained unchanged, a shadow, unseen yet omnipresent, lingering behind banners, religions, flags, and constitutions. This shadow is the echo of the Elohim, their legacy, their system. It did not vanish with them. It adapted. It learned invisibility. Look closely at our world. Governments, corporations, religious institutions, all are built on the same principle. Centralized power, strict hierarchy, control of information, manipulation of minds. Is this not a reflection of the ancient order, where the Elohim ruled humanity, assigning roles and dictating places for each soul? We like to think we live in an age of freedom, but is it freedom when our thoughts are shaped by foreign algorithms? Advertising campaigns, media, social networks, these are the new temples where we worship not God, but the system. There are no more stone altars, yet there are screens before which we kneel daily, offering them our attention, our emotions, our will. Look deeper. The laws we live by are often little more than updated versions of ancient commandments. The images of heaven and hell have morphed into fears of success and failure, love and loneliness, acceptance and rejection. Today, there is no need to burn heretics physically. It suffices to cancel them in the digital arena, erasing their voices from the collective consciousness. These are the new inquisitions, subtler, more insidious. And religions? They remain, their dogmas embedded in culture, language, and moral codes. Even those who consider themselves atheists still think in terms shaped by millennia of propaganda: good and evil, duty and guilt, salvation and punishment. These ideas are woven into the fabric of our perception like a virus in the code of a program. Yet most do not see the chains. They believe in the illusion of choice, unaware that every option has been carefully arranged on the system's shelf. The clothes we wear, the words we speak, the dreams we pursue, even the revolutions we ignite, so often predicted and preempted by this system. It knows how to absorb every threat, reshaping it into a new form of control. The Elohim may have vanished physically, but their creation, society itself, has become a self-sustaining machine. No longer are overseers required from the heavens. We have become our own jailers, policing each other, suppressing any who dare to think differently. Consider the symbols of power: triangles, pyramids, eyes, radiant discs. These are not coincidences. They are echoes of an age when authority came from those who watched from above. Even today, these emblems adorn currencies, coats of arms, corporate logos, quiet reminders of who owns this world. Perhaps you think this an exaggeration, that the world is too complex to be someone's design. But remember, the greatest form of control is that which remains unseen. The Elohim's system has become so organic, we accept it as the natural order. We are born into it, grow up within it, die in it, rarely asking the ultimate question: what if all this is a construct? And if it is a construct, where are its edges? Where is the exit point? Does it even exist? Or is every surge toward freedom, every revolution, merely a changing of faces atop the pedestal, leaving the structure untouched? You may feel it now, the tension, as if the very fabric of reality trembles. This is not merely a tale of the past, it is a mirror of the present. And in that mirror, you see yourself, a component in someone else's machine. Yet there is hope. It lies in knowledge, for knowledge is the first step toward shattering illusions. And if you have reached this point, if you are reading these words, then somewhere deep within your consciousness, a spark has already ignited. A spark that whispers, "You were not made to serve. You were made to remember." Silence. It is in silence that all truth is born. After centuries of voices, commands, doctrines, and curses, silence may seem terrifying, but this is no emptiness. It is a space where, for the first time, you can hear your own breath, and the breath of truth. Imagine the world around you as a great veil, woven from words, images, rules, fears. Each layer, religion, politics, culture, technology, was laid one atop another until the light beyond it became a distant mirage. But now, the veil begins to tremble. Its threads tear under the weight of your awareness. You begin to see. The Elohim were not gods, but architects of a system into which we were drawn. Their design was not about love, but about control. And yet, they too may have been prisoners, trapped within a greater construct, as unknowable to them as their machinations were to us. And now, with all you once knew in ruins, you are faced with emptiness. But this is not the emptiness of fear. It is a blank canvas. Do you realize that from this moment, everything you believe, everything you take as truth, must be reconsidered? The Bible, like many other texts, was not an end, but a hint, not an absolute, but a mirror meant to reveal not an external God, but your inner source. True awakening is not about exposing others. It is about returning to yourself. Deep within your being lies a spark. It was not created by the Elohim. It is not part of their program. It belongs solely to you. It cannot be programmed. It cannot be taken. It has always been here, though you could not hear it over the noise of the world. You are not a pawn. You are not the product of someone else's experiment. You are a witness. And if you can see all this, then you are capable of far more. Ask yourself, what if everything you thought inevitable is an illusion? What if you are not a slave to the system but its observer? What if you have always been able to step beyond it, but never knew where the door was? Now that door stands before you. But whether you open it, that choice is yours alone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching and listening. Perhaps this journey was only the first step, the step that leads you back to remembering who you truly are.